big ideas need big advocates and big friends. I call that power networking, not just networking. Networking is the usual, you go to a power hour, somebody gives you their card up. But power networking is based on you making connections with people and telling them what you want to do, and say, do you know anybody who can help me with this? Mm-hmm. And that question, do you know of anybody who can help me with this? Based on you telling the story like I'm telling you, I want to recycle soap from the hotels, but I know if I go to the hotels, they're gonna be looking at me like, oh my goodness, this former refugee, yuck. First of all, number two, we're all gonna get sued. I mean, there were so many impediments. But the more I saw impediments, the more I knew this was a really good idea. Because most people, when they see impediments, they run off. So I met a woman called Vicky Gordon, who was the vice president of external relations for the Hilton Corporation. And she said, Derreck, we sat in a coffee shop. I drew the idea. She said, Derreck, I had never even thought about what happens to that soap.
Welcome to the Beyond Speaking podcast from Premier Speakers Bureau, featuring in-depth conversations with the world's most in-demand keynote speakers.
Hi, I'm Brian Lord, your host here of the Beyond Speaking podcast. Our guest today is Derreck Kayongo. He's a CEO, visionary entrepreneur, human rights activist, and the founder of the Global Soap Project, which I'm excited to hear about. From a Ugandan refugee to a successful business leader. And he's done a great job speaking for my clients. One in particular has booked him at least 6 times. So Derreck, thank you for coming on. Kijambo and Oli Otia.
Buruji, salam. Thank you, Brian, for having me.
Yeah, that's the only Luganda I know. So I know a little bit of Swahili, but that's the extent of my Luganda. So I'm glad I was able to drop that in there.
Yeah, that would get you out of jail anytime. I mean, that is a good one.
Yeah, if I'm ever in jail in Kampala, I know what to do. So anyway, you've got this incredible story. You're in Atlanta now, but you didn't start there. So can you tell us kind of your journey to at least the 5-minute version of that to where you got to be, where you are now? Yeah,
so I came to go to school in the States after the encouragement of a lovely, lovely lady called Marge Campbell from Pittsburgh, who came to take care of us as refugee kids. Mm-hmm. And after she saw my talent, she said, Derreck, you need to get out of here and go get an education. So I landed in the city of brotherly love, where, Brian, I found this amazing discovery. It was in my bathroom in the hotel that I was in. They had 3 bars of soap, and there were facial soap, body soap, and hand washing soap. And I said to the life of me, why do they have soap for every part of their body? Now, my father was a soap maker before the war began, and he never talked to me, Brian, and said every one time, Derreck, that is your butt soap. Don't use that for your face. That's your face. So I was like shocked. So I took the 2 bars, put them in my bag for another day, and every day they would bring back more soap. So I would steal them. And then I realized they're going to charge me for it. So I took them back and gave up to a concierge, and the concierge started laughing. He said, why were you giving me soap? I said, because you're going to charge me for it. I don't have the money to pay for it. He burst out laughing. And he said, Derreck, are you African? Are you Nigerian? Because you guys all think we're Nigerians. And so that journey of thinking about recycling soap. And then we built the Global Soap Project after that. And here we are.
That's amazing. So I'm curious to know, is there anything you could say about your journey from that, from Uganda? And for those who don't know, maybe say where that is. Like I've studied Africa a bit, but just so people have an idea of where that is on a map.
Yeah, so it's in the heart of Africa. It's a very interesting country, Brian. It is the source of the Nile. Now, the reason that is important is because there's no Egypt without the Nile. Mm-hmm. And so we have a huge civilization opportunity there. So it's a beautiful little country. But something bad really happened when Idi Amin, for those of you who have never watched the movie Last King of Scotland, you should watch it by Forrest Whitaker. And that guy, Idi Amin, was a brutal, brutal leader. And so he said to wage a war against all of the intellectuals, against all the business communities, against Indian Ugandans who had lived there for 70 years, who had been brought by the British to build the railway. He kicked them out of the country in 90 days after they had been there for 70 years. So it was amazing. So my family and I were caught in a very hard situation where there was a firing squad situation, and my father, my mom, and my siblings were on the firing squad. for some reason, which I can tell in my bigger story, we survived that firing squad. And that's where my story really, really becomes very interesting. But for another day, for those of you who want to hear
it. That's a teaser right there. You got to bring him in for the rest of the story. So fast forwarding it, so you go through there, you go through Nairobi, Kenya, come to the States. And what did that woman see in you? You said there's a woman that saw something in you. What did she see in you that made her think, hey, this kid can do something great?
Because I was very industrious around her. Even though I was a refugee kid, I never really thought of myself as a refugee. I thought I'm in a different place, in a different time. I'm 13, 14 years old at the time. And I love to play soccer. I love to, learn from her. And she would be making what she called cookies. And I didn't know what cookies were. And I would say, what are these? She's like, cookies. I said, cookies. And I would say, teach me how to make the cookies. And she would teach me. Then she would introduce me to iced tea. And I didn't know that it was cold. So I took a sip of it. It was cold. I said, Ma, you forgot to cook the tea. What is going on over here? So she had all these small things, and we learned together how to bake, how to cook. She brought soccer to me and all that stuff. So she said, Derreck, you're so charismatic and you're so ingenious in what you do. You need to really go get a good education to frame everything around you. And so I ended up at Tufts University in Boston from that lovely lady. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great to hear. And so when did you actually start? Like, what's the timeline? So you start the Global Soap Project. At what point did you start that, and what triggered that? I know that you have the story, but when did you actually start putting it into action?
So it took a while, because Brian, if you're serious about doing something, that's why things take a while. Really serious innovations take a while. So I talked to my father, said, I have this great idea of recycling all this soap. How much soap do they throw away? 800 million bars of soap annually are thrown away by hotels. 800 million. Wow. So to turn that into a new product, I had to really first learn the culture of this country, this great country called America, and learn how do you build an NGO? How do you create a board? How do you raise money? How do you recycle soap? That was another big question, because people think you can just recycle it. No, it's very, very tough process. So I had to spend time, finish school, because every good idea that was meant for you, God will preserve it for you. You have it. It will wait for you, but learn your skill set and your craft. So I worked for NGOs for about 10 years. It took me 10 years to then say, I know enough about board construction. I know enough about leadership. I know enough about innovation. Now I can go start this idea. And lo and behold, boom, the idea was born after 10 years of being in the country.
What was was there like the first chain that really took you on with that? Or were there any like big supporters or advocates along the way?
Yeah, so big ideas need big advocates and big friends. I call that power networking, not just networking. Networking is the usual, you go to a power hour, somebody gives you their card up. But power networking is based on you making connections with people and telling them what you want to do, and say, do you know anybody who can help me with this? Mm-hmm. And that question, do you know of anybody who can help me with this? Based on you telling the story like I'm telling you, I want to recycle soap from the hotels, but I know if I go to the hotels, they're gonna be looking at me like, oh my goodness, this former refugee, yuck. First of all, number two, we're all gonna get sued. I mean, there were so many impediments. But the more I saw impediments, the more I knew this was a really good idea. Because most people, when they see impediments, they run off. So I met a woman called Vicki Gordon, who was the vice president of external relations for the Hilton Corporation. And she said, Derreck, we sat in a coffee shop. I drew the idea. She said, Derreck, I had never even thought about what happens to that soap. And I said, Vicki, it is the heaviest thing you throw away. And when it gets into the landfills, it contaminates the landfill and slows down the decomposition process of the landfill. So if we take it out, then you know what? We will give, number one, health to new people that need soap back in Africa. 2 million kids die every year, Brian.
Wow.
2 million because of poor hygiene. Girls drop out of school in Malawi because boys make fun of them because there's poor hygiene. So I said, Vicki, if you help me, we can change that around. And she said, you know what? Let's do it. And that's how we began, through a power network, through a woman that was really, really close to me and knew exactly that my passion was going to carry me through that whole thing. But that's how we began.
Yeah. And I love that, just because there's so many different layers that you don't think of. I know the Hilton Foundation is huge in Africa, building wells and everything else. And, but just the thought of empowering women, like you don't think there's this chain between somebody throwing away a bar of soap in a hotel
Correct.
in Atlanta,
Correct.
and girls being able to go to school and be able to support themselves and their family when things go, whatever it may be. That's a huge thing. And for you to have that thing, because a lot of those kids are never going to know Derreck, but they're going to know a better future because of the things that you did and the things that she did.
Yeah. So the Hilton Corporation brand ended up giving me $1.3 million to build the first factory. And that first factory was a pilot. And when we proved the concept, we were then able to get more money. And then before you knew it, I had a factory in Vegas. We partnered with Clean the World. People know Clean the World. And we're in Orlando, we're in Europe. And before you knew it, we were supplying soap to 90 countries around the world.
Wow.
Yeah. So it has been a fantastic, fantastic idea to see it happening in these places. Yes.
So we've got Hilton as an example. I know sort of in the broader sense, when you come and talk to companies, how do you encourage companies to strive for profit-driven or purpose-driven profit?
So purpose-driven profit is a new term I've coined to really help corporations to understand their role in society. It's not enough to just have a foundation and you give 10,000 here, 20,000 there. When you actually can solve a problem. And I'll give you an example of a company that I love very much, Patagonia. Patagonia is built to literally serve the Amazon area and to go into South America and really change the composition of the communities there, literally dedicating at least 2 to 3% of their company profit that would save all our lives. Because as you know, the Amazon are the lungs of our continent. So that kind of dedication with purpose, really makes profit attractive to all of us. Mm-hmm. The profit that has no attraction is the one where we all are just greedy and buying stuff and buying stuff and buying stuff, and we have no direction where our purpose is and what our profit is really doing. What is the impact of your company, or especially if it's a big one? It doesn't have to be big, but a small one, mid-size. What is your impact? Because that's when we start to see your purpose. Mm-hmm. And so that is a beautiful thing that I work on. So when I worked with the Hilton Corporation, they didn't ask me for a business plan, Brian. They just saw a great idea by this African kid who had so much passion. And they said, what shall we lose? We're just going to give him $1.3 million. That is nothing for the Hilton Corporation. Mm-hmm. But let him try. Let him try. That is a company that has a soul. That is a company that has purpose. And they don't look at profit alone. They look at purpose as equally as they look at profit. And that's what drives them as a company. It makes them very, very utilitarian and very good to the whole community. So that's what I mean by purpose-driven profit.
Mm-hmm. And one thing I like too about your message is that, so I've only booked you for corporate clients, Fortune 500 type companies. Where they are, it's not so much booking you to speak for nonprofits on how to do nonprofits better. It's on taking those things that you've learned and being able to apply them in business realm. One of those is innovation. What can companies do to harness the power of innovation and creative problem solving in what they do? Like, take your lessons. How can they apply it themselves?
So for me, I think it's an issue of having time to really think about things. Sometimes companies are so busy because they have one niche area and that's all they do. But actually, if you really look at their capabilities, they can expand their innovations into newer spaces, which is why they get disrupted all the time. You hear this company has been disrupted because it doesn't spend time to say, okay, we have nailed this one area, but what other areas do vicariously related to this one area that we're very good at? Mm-hmm. And so they stop innovating and they stop inviting innovation. All they want you to do is go to a 9 to 5 and go home. You did your part, go home. There's no what I call war rooms where they spend time and say, your job, guys, you 5 guys, your job is to spend time, think about the next move, the next innovation. What is this enough? So you have companies like VCRs and Beta and Kodak that missed out on an opportunity of putting a small camera on a phone. Now Kodak, we used to all go to Wolf Camera. Remember Wolf Camera, where you used to go develop your photographs?
Yeah.
When is the last time, Brian, you went to Wolf Camera?
Not often. Although there's a little comeback now. We have the little things going to the little what are they called? The one where it prints out itself. We do have those.
Yeah.
There's a little throwback.
Yeah.
All the teens are into those. But yeah, Wolf Camera, haven't been there in a long time.
Yeah, disrupted.
Yeah.
Disrupted. Now, and they had the market locked down. Kodak disrupted, had the market locked down. I just watched BlackBerry. The story of BlackBerry so those are companies that are very successful that I loved very much, and I still love all of them. But they did not spend time in the war room to find out how innovation works. Number 2, and the last point I usually say, innovation is about leadership. If the leader of a corporation doesn't spend time finding ways to innovate by asking his team, what else can we do to make this place innovative, better for employees, for our clients, for product, and he's just doing the one thing, which is, what is our quarterly report? What is our quarterly report? Those are lovely, but what is the health report? Okay, that's what I call it, the health report. That feeds into the purpose-driven profit piece. Because if employees know Brian, our leader, really cares about these soft power issues that become very complementary to the hard power issues, which is profit, then we're going to help him do this job very well. That's why these corporations like Patagonia have done very, very well. Lastly, people laugh about Tom's shoes. Remember Tom's shoes? The little funny looking shoes? And what was his premise? His premise was, buy one and I'll give one away. That was his premise. He had purpose. And whether you like the way they looked like or not, man, we all wore Tom's shoes somewhere. That's how you do stuff. Yeah, it's all about leadership. Leadership. So that's what I talk about when I talk about this idea of Global Soft Project.
That's awesome. So breaking it down from sort of the company standpoint down, looking at something from the individual standpoint. So anybody in the audience listening to you, whether they're a leader or they've just started, how does somebody, obviously you went through a lot of difficult things. How does someone develop a resilient mindset?
That's a very good question. And people don't know that when we talk about these medieval societies that had, the power of balance, the power of self-awareness, the power of self-improvement, the need to be healthy. Those things sound like they're la la land kind of situations. Oh, that's another Buddhist sort of a claim. That's another African. I'm telling you, if you are not healthy intellectually, physically, it's very, very hard for you to compete at a very high level. Very hard, because you get depressed easily. You think everything is not functioning or working. Setback becomes an issue of defeat for you. And not knowing that NASA, if you go to NASA, they have setbacks every day. And they go back in there and change around. And before you know, there's a rocket going up. You're using cell phones. Do you know how much setback was faced by NASA and everybody to develop that technology? Wi-Fi. So most people, when they get a setback moment, it's a time for them to give up. No, a setback is a very Derreck's definition of a setback is that the idea that you're trying to work on is telling you you're not good enough. Go back and revise that. It's what we've learned in school. If you get a B, it's not that you're an idiot. No, the teacher's saying, go back and really read that thing. If you want to get an A, you really have to go back. You don't quit school because you got a B or a C. You go back and study. And people forget all those lessons that we've learned since we were growing up. When I played chess with my dad and he beat me 45 times, I never gave up. I learned how to beat him, and now my son beats me in chess. Setbacks are so important. Other people call them failures. But for me, I don't use the word failure because it's so loaded. I use the word setback. A setback is, you try that, but you get a setback in the process. that means you have to go correct it, and then you keep on moving. So individually, health, being healthy, being self-aware, spending time with yourself. I do a retreat, a Derreck retreat, once every year, where I go away and spend time with myself and ask, what are the things that I've done wrong? What are the things I've done right? Where do I need help? Then I come back, I evolve out of that space, knowing exactly who I'm going to talk to help me rebuild in that space. How many times have you had a self-retreat? You know, we talk about vacation, and you take your kids and they're screaming. There's no you come back more exhausted than when you went. That is not self-awareness. So that's what I usually talk about from an individual standpoint.
No, I love it. That is great. One of the other things too is talking about leaders. You've got this resiliency mindset. How, as a leader, do you inspire your teams to their full potential, either from bouncing back, from those setbacks, or just from a common everyday example of how do you help them reach their full potential?
I think that you involve them in the what I call problem anatomy. You go in there and, without blaming anybody, say, guys, we didn't do this right. I want everybody to tell me, what do you think could have been done better? And let's see where we can go from here. That problem anatomy is never done in corporations. It's assumed that Brian is the guy that messed this thing up. He's down the road. And they don't look at the trail of mistakes that led to that particular big mistake. So I tell people, every time you see a big mistake at work, it's said as a small mistake. And because you never pay attention to small mistakes, you then have the big one, the big enchilada that shocks everybody. And that's why beautiful corporations, I don't know whether you know this, but beautiful corporations that have spent time doing beautiful things, like Volkswagen, one of my favorite cars. And one of the employees just decided to do a small mistake, which was to do with the catalytic converter. And they had promised so much in terms of air pollution and all that stuff, and that their car is going to be exactly what it's supposed to be, which is this beautiful car. And then that big mistake cost them a lot of money. But you know what? They went back and corrected it, paid a price for it. Guess what? Now we are buying Volkswagen. I love Volkswagen. That is the kind of company I want to see, that can go and admit the problem and then go back and do problem anatomy and then figure out how to correct it and then move on. That is how we want you to do. And acknowledge your problem, go self-correct it, and come back and give us a beautiful story of how that went wrong and how you've come back. And as Bill Clinton once said, I'm the comeback kid. I wish you borrowed somebody else. So be a comeback kid, man. Be a comeback kid. That's what America is all about. We are all comeback kids, if you want to.
That's great. Now, I do have a question for you. So kind of last one to round it up here. I think I mentioned I'm an Indiana farm boy. I went to Kenya, and I couldn't believe how much that part looked like Indiana. It's all cows and corn, and it's got that smell, and all the farmers, it doesn't matter where you are, farmers kind of amble the same way, which I was like, this guy's walking like my dad. So what is similar between Uganda and Atlanta, and what's different?
Oh my goodness. Let's start with the differences. We have no traffic like this. There's too much traffic. I mean, that's a similarity. Uganda and Atlanta have the same problem, traffic. We have a lot of traffic. Number two, I think the similarities is that we're all party animals. Atlanta is a party town. It's very, very big party town. So is Kampala. When you land at the airport, you hear music from the airport all the way to the city. So there's this love of life. But I think one thing we have in common is Atlanta is a city of civil rights. And social justice. This is where the civil rights movement began, with Dr. Martin Luther King, with C.T. Vivian, John Lewis, all these people that have come to learn about, who have done remarkable things to self-correct the country's morality. And look at where we are right now. In the same way, Uganda did the same thing. We have the same kind of leadership that we had to then bring about to get rid of people like Idi Amin, so we can bring about a country that is prosperous and doing very well. So there's this resilience in these two people that is amazing. They love to party, they love good food, all that good stuff. The difference is that obviously we're Ugandans and they're from Atlanta.
Also, how many streets in Kampala are named Peachtree? Because I know about one out of
None.
every 4 streets in Atlanta is Peachtree something.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, everybody like in Nashville, every third street is named Old Hickory something. So it's kind of you keep getting
Yeah.
different Old Hickory. So that's awesome.
Oh my God.
Well,
That's very
Derreck,
awesome.
thank you so much for coming on and being part of this and talking about
Yes.
innovation, having that great mindset, sharing your journey, making this global impact, and just sharing so much for us. So we really, really appreciate it.
Can I tell you one last thing,
Oh
Brian?
yeah, definitely, definitely. Let's hear it.
Um, Good work leaves behind good legacies.
Mhm.
And so I asked myself in my self retreat, what is the legacy of Derreck's work? And now, when you go to the hotels, you will no longer see the 3 bars of soap: the facial soap, body soap, and hand washing soap. You will see canisters mounted in the bathroom soap area that are liquid soap.
Mm.
So we got rid of the pollution, even though we are now moving less in terms of providing soap globally. But the environmental impact and legacy of our work is really a trademark of what it means to be a leader who leaves back a legacy that inspires everybody. So we were able to inspire the hotels to look at their corporate social responsibility, and they changed that around. So congratulations to all of them.
Oh, that is awesome. That is awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Great. And
Take
so
care.
for everybody watching or listening, make sure to check out Derreck's page at premierspeakers.com. And for the podcast, make sure to subscribe, write, and review. So Derreck, thank you again so much. And thank you to everyone who is watching and listening.
Thank you for joining us for the Beyond Speaking podcast. To learn more about today's guest, visit premierspeakers.com. Make sure to subscribe and leave a review wherever you listen.